Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devin Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejan Sarowick. Sejan?
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's time for a show.
It is time for a show, and to kick off this show, not even a minute in, I need to announce my new goal. I need to announce my pursuit. It's not really a candidacy because it's not like they're doing a nationwide vote to figure it out. But
No, I like that we are in the middle of the middle month, and now you're doing your 2021 resolution. Let's do it.
Devin, this is not a 2021 resolution. This is a life goal announcement for Devin Decker.
Bum, bum, bum.
I want to be a judge on America's Got Talent.
I mean, everybody's doing it.
I mean, I don't want to be one of these guest judges, Jesse Ferguson, Craig Robinson. I want one of those four people, Simon Cowell, Howie Mandel, Heidi Klum, and Sofia Vergara. Eventually, one of them is going to not want to be a judge on America's Got Talent anymore.
Yeah.
And
I feel like Sofia Vergara's got to be the first one out of there. Like, she's going to be the first one to land some role in, like, an indie film or something and be out.
I mean, if I had to guess person who would step down, my guess would be on Howie Mandel because he has the longest tenure of continued judging on America's Got Talent.
If it's just a matter of leaving without needing there to be a project to then move on to next, for sure, Howie Mandel. Simon Cowell's never going to quit. This is just what he does for a living, right? Like, this is what he's always done. So it's definitely not going to be him. Howie Mandel, I could see him deciding to retire with like riches, but I mean, like, you know, as far as I can tell, the dude loves the work.
Right. And I want to make sure you said a very important phrase there that I want to put down on the line, that this is not why I want to be a judge of America's Got Talent. I don't give a shit about the money. I don't care about that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's a very worthwhile thing for anybody to do. I legit think it's just a thing to keep somebody's face on TV for a moment is really like.
And that's going to be the Devin Decker difference. That's what I want to change about it. Because I hate America's Got Talent. I will, this is the worst way to announce candidacy, desire, life goal, but I am not a fan of America's Got Talent. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the main reasons, in addition to the fact that I wasn't there when it started, right? I wasn't around when America's Got Talent began. So yeah, I couldn't be polluted by it. Like, whatever mass brain scan was sent out to America to care about America's Got Talent, I was on the ocean when that happened. So I missed that. And then it's on in my house because I live with three people who were present and who got the brainwashing for America's Got Talent. You have to watch, you need to do it. Nothing else is happening. It's the summer. We're the Saturday Night Live of summer entertainment. Where else you gonna go? And the fact of the matter is that I watched this, and a lot of these acts, they're good, but I don't know if they're good enough. But it comes to this point where America's Got Talent doesn't have the judge who's willing to go there and make that stand.
Yeah. I have some feelings about this, but I'm letting you get through.
No, I want that's it, so. And that's it. And it comes down to it was a family performing. And they were very talented. All of them could play the instruments, and they have this long legacy of music. Both of the parents are music teachers, and the varied instruments that are on stage, and the fact that the dad can play all of them, which is why all of the kids know what they do. Like, great story, but they should have gotten an X. They should have gotten an X because their audition to go to Hollywood on America's Got Talent, their first audition, it was all chorus. There was no verse. I'm not having an all chorus band. You're not showing me what I would need from someone who I'm going to eventually have as a performer in Las Vegas.
I mean, like, besides being a family, do they have like a shtick? Like, you know, the Van Trapps were also on the run from the Nazis, right? Like there was a hook there, right? Like, what is their thing? Like,
I mean, it's a family band.
Osmonds are
they kind of look,
but also brother and sister. Like, there's always something, right?
They were vaguely Pepperidge Farm. They were vaguely Partridge Family-esque. They all wore very bright colors. I mean, they were talented. I want to say that they were talented, but America's Got Talent, to me, and this is what I think has been lost because of that initial brainwashing that I referred to earlier, is having the talent is one thing, but being able to perform in a talent showcase like this, you really need to wow. And if you're going there and the song you're performing is literally just all chorus, that's like it. What it felt like was if a band were performing on a television show. Like, we're gonna do this part of the song that's the hookiest and the catchiest, because that's all that they're gonna pay for, or that's all that they're gonna show. No, I don't know if the judges are privy to a longer audition than what is eventually cut up and delivered to us at home, right? We've already talked about reality television not being that real, being edited and packaged to shit.
I don't think for one, well, maybe Howie Mandel, but I don't think for 1 minute any of them bothers to watch all of the audition tapes, right? There must be a culling, right?
Well, I mean,
the most sensible cutoff line is if they're going to be on the show that night, then the audition tape is available to them. But I would also say the cutoff is probably also the cut for tonight is available. Do you want to watch this before you go out there, Simon? Yeah, sure. I'll give it a watch. Like that is probably what happens. So no is the answer to that, I think.
Okay, I mean,
unless they want it, like they could go looking for it, but I don't. Why would you?
Right. Well, they see it live. I mean, the thing is, so you clearly don't watch America's Got Talent, and that means that I love this. You're the perfect person to announce this whole desire to. Because
they don't know the group before they get out on stage, right?
So the fact is that there's definitely a culling. You're not wrong about that. The ones that we see on stage, live, I mean, they're not live, but they're like a live audition. And even then, that could be something that they've already worked on with a producer, and now we're just going to introduce it, and it's going to be done in front of the judges. Like, there has to be more to it, and I understand that. But really, it was just... Hello? Robot Siegen? That was weird. Siegen, are you a robot and you're not telling me?
No, I don't know what's going on. The connection, it's not timing us on Skype. So I don't think we've got a good connection.
Oh, okay.
Are you recording me?
Yeah, you're being recorded right now. Yeah, so I can go... Yeah, but it's just one of those situations where I don't know. Like, it has to go through steps before it gets to them performing in front of the judges. That's what anything does. The fact that when I went to go audition for the Road Show in 2009, I actually was in front of the panel the first day, like, that seemed very strange to me.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that, like, I didn't have to go through a first initial, like, meet with a producer to see if I'd have whatever these people are looking for. They put me into a room with people who work on the Road Show who are live talent every day. I mean, it wasn't being filmed or anything, but like, it just seemed kind of weird. Where like for my Millionaire audition, I had to first take a test to prove that I was smart enough to be there. And then I had to meet with a production assistant. And then once I wowed that production assistant, I met with a producer. And then once I met with that producer, they gave me an on-air test. Like, that was my before. And then a year later, I got on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Yeah.
Like, so, like, I have that knowledge in there. So, and it's for a fact, like, for the auditions, you do show up live to do it. But, and this comes from my friend Tim. He works at Twin Oaks. Twin Oaks has been talked about a lot lately in Rhode Island. But Tim, you know, he's always been a waiter at Twin Oaks, but we met because he was in front of me in line for that Road Show audition. And he told me about the time he went to audition at America's Got Talent. And just that, like, he went through 3 different levels of people. And then even so, he never got in front of the judges. So I know, like, that's also why the Road Show is in my mind. Because I'm thinking about what America's Got Talent is and would mean. Like,
So you want to a completely different show than America's Got Talent that
No,
you could be the host of.
no,
Because
I want to be on
you're
America's Got
missing
Talent.
because you're
What am I
missing one
missing?
giant piece of this puzzle, and maybe this is because you missed the first season, but it's kind of hard to ignore. But America's Got Talent isn't about the actual acts, because there are a good number of every episode real people. I bet even maybe that family the other day was an actual real family, but they're not all real, Dev. You know that,
I do
right?
know that. I am fully aware of that. Uh,
like just
because of
this year alone,
unfortunately,
there has been like three like not real acts. It is for anybody that is not does not kind of jive with what I'm saying though. I want to make this clear. This is like when they revealed that Kermit the Frog was the snail, right? Like that moment, and we had a discussion about like, doesn't that kind of like fuck with the idea of the realism of the rest of this show? And I said, my exact words were, this has been reality TV for a long time. America's Got Talent is the perfect example of that. There are so many acts that show up on the show that are straight up created for the show.
wow. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like the Daredevil acts, or like guy getting shot out of a cannon. Like,
Y'all know about Neil E. Boyd.
what's
Do you
that?
remember Neil Boyd? Do you remember Neil Boyd?
No.
So Neil Boyd was he was kind of like the Susan
Boyle?
Simon Cowell's other project, the
Yeah.
Susan Boyle
From Britain's Got
for
Talent. It's the
so
same show.
so Neil so Neil Boyd is was, I should say, he has passed away recently, R.I.P. The guy was, for all intents and purposes, a good person and an extremely good opera singer, and that was his shtick, because he showed up on the show, shows up on stage, and he happens to be a quite heavy set man and kind of unassuming in a lot of ways, and they don't know what he's about to do, and then of course he just fucking lets loose with this opera voice that is just astounding, and he, as I said, for all intents and purposes, from what I could tell, ends up going on to win the season, is a good person. I don't want to imply that I think that he was created for the show. However, the very next season, on one of the other many Guts talents in the world, because there's like 5 or 6 of them running at one time all over the world, they beat for beat recreated his character for that version of the show, down to the audience and judge reactions to the reveal of what a wonderful voice this person had. So they took something that hit big, and they knew hit big in this character, in this person, Neil Boyd, and like they took the phenom that was over here, and then just decided that did so well, let's plug it in somewhere else. That's the kind of shenanigans that they pull. When something works really well on one or two of them, they will then turn around and just fake it on another one, and then add to that the number of times they've had fake people show up as ads for shit. Keith Apothecary, I think is how you say his last name. Apothecary. This
Keith
year
Apothecary from Woonsocket.
Is not real.
Yeah, but he is though. But he's a
Nope.
YouTube guy.
Nathan, I believe Nathan Barnett is his name.
Nathan Barnett is his real name,
and he doesn't even play that character anymore. Like,
right.
He's moved on from that character.
But Keith Apothecary was a character that he played in YouTube videos.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And but he got to audition, or he got to be on the show, and like from what I understand, like wowed people. And it's like, that's great, but we all know this guy's not real, right? And it's not, and I don't think it's like a Borat situation where like they don't know what's happening. I think they're very well aware when these kinds of things occur that the show is doing this. You know what I mean?
All right, wait a minute. So you had me. You totally had me. There were some loose ends. There were some threads that I didn't love, because created for the show, all I can think of is Jurassic Park style. We're going to take DNA from talented people and create the perfect acts for the show. I know that's not what you mean, but it is a hurdle that I had to clear, as you kept saying created for the show. And you had me until you brought up Keith Apicary. I can't think of his name. I know.
But he's the dude that like broke his leg at fucking E3 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah,
he
does video game YouTube videos.
Right. And I don't
has
mean
a whole thing.
I don't mean he as a character was created as a show, but
right.
His whole bit of coming on stage, they knew who he was beforehand. He's been a YouTube sensation.
Yes, exactly.
To the point where he has moved on to a second channel. So that dude doesn't show up on stage. It'd be as if like we all know who Borat is, and
Right.
and Sacha Baron Cohen has the ability to walk into a particular room of people that don't know who he is and pull off that character, and that's fine. That's not America's Got Talent.
True.
If he walked on stage as Borat, we'd all go, "Oh, that's Sacha Baron Cohen being funny." Like we would all know that, and that's the problem. That's one of the huge things about America's Got Talent is that they are willing to go to that place to do that bit more than once a season. They are willing to go into that kind of well just to have some fun sometimes, which goes against any concept that the show is actually real and in the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's that thing where as soon as you fake anything in this reality television program, everything is questioned. It's Keith Apicary, by the way. Apicary.
Apicary.
Keith Apicary.
I've never been able to say his name, but yeah.
It's okay. It's fine. It's fine. I just want to. I know that there are listeners who will give us crap if we don't say Keith Apicary's name correctly. So I wanted to make sure that we got there.
Yeah.
These are people who have signed photos of Keith Apicary in their basement.
Screw them. Dad is a better channel.
I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, well, if they will, they'll know exactly what that means. But yeah, so there's this there is this level to it, and again, it is the exact same conversation that we had with America Can Dance. What's the name of that one with Ken Jeong there?
The Masked Singer.
The Masked Singer. Thank you. That's the one.
I mean, there's also the Masked Dancer, which
right.
crashed and burned. That show. Apparently, someone dancing in a mask. That's not as interesting as someone singing in a mask.
Yeah. But yeah, no. So your issue with this show is that it is this show, Tiff.
I guess I didn't even. First of all, I had no idea about that. The only thing I knew is that they definitely share talent, like well-known acts, because the magic acts have sort of dried up on America's Got Talent recently. I say that when one of the magic acts that won the whole thing is from Rhode Island, but there's been a weird dry up in it because going on Penn and Teller's Fool Us on the CW is a better path to actually getting notoriety and noticed in the magic community. Because if you can think of a trick that they don't know how you did it, you are automatically featured for X amount of performances at their Las Vegas show and theater.
Oh, and they're in with like the whole like Magic Union and stuff too, right? Are they still? Yeah, like I couldn't remember if that was one of the bridges they burned because I love those dudes, but man, they can burn a fucking bridge if they want to.
Yes.
But yeah. So I mean, like in addition to that, like you are also, I mean, that famously for a magician is just an automatic like rise in I mean pay alone, never mind status, if you're part of that whole group. Yeah
And so, but there was a lot of crossover right when Fool Us started, where it's my father's like, I think I know this guy, and I'm like, yeah, well, not me, it was Dale, because again, if I'm watching America's Got Talent, I'm begrudgingly in the room kind of wanting it to be over. And you know, the reason why this was a goal of mine is because I feel like these people need to have their talent questioned a little bit so that they can be made better. I go back to my quote that has gotten me by since I was working on a cruise ship and a lot of long nights, and that is false praise is the abortionist of innovation. Like, if you have a problem with how I'm doing something, you need to tell me. Otherwise, I'll do it I'll continue to do it the wrong way when maybe we could find a better way.
Yeah, screw all these kids and their damn participation trophies. They need a good ass whooping.
That's not what I'm saying.
Sounds like it.
That's not, no, what I'm saying is if you go to, okay, America's Got Talent, the other big issue I have with it is that it's supposed to be a talent show, but historically, singers win. And that's not hyper surprising when you consider that Simon Cowell has been involved in it from the beginning, and singing is his bread and butter. Like, that's what he does. But, like, so it becomes a singing competition. So then, if you're going to go there and you're going to perform music, right? You're not going to do something like juggling or dancing or something like that. If you're going to sing, I feel like you have to be exceptional. And if you're going to do an original song, it can't be all chorus. I know that might sound crazy, but it really just stuck in my craw that, like, these people are good, they're talented, but one of these judges needs to say to them, I think what you have is great, and you can really perform, but musically, I need more from you. And that didn't happen.
Yeah,
so
I think the other part that you're missing is that the other big element of this, the other big piece of the pie for America's Got Talent, is more than any other one of these shows. It's the cry bait. Like it is all about these sob stories. American Idol kind of birthed that kind of concept for all intents and purposes, like the idea of the down on their luck person who strikes gold type situation and things like that. But America's Got Talent has developed that formula to a fucking T, where they can deliver 5 of those an episode and they know the package. They know how to cut it perfectly to deliver it that way. So there's also this element that it becomes so much more about getting invested not because of the talent, not because of the thing that happens on stage. Basically, what you see on stage is just the culmination of, right? And the people that do better on that show are the people that understand that. like, and so I think that's the other part of it, is when you start critiquing what they're doing on stage, you're focusing on a part that, like, is definitely there. I'm not going to say that it's ignored entirely, but it's not the most important part for the structure of the show.
I have 2 things to say to you. Thing one is, I'm glad I decided to keep this to myself and spring it on you in the episode. Thing 2 is, you've unlocked a lot of doors for me. You have explained to me a lot of my problems with America's Got Talent, because almost all the time I come in just to the performance, and I just judge the performance. And apparently, I'm the idiot for watching a show called America's Got Talent and thinking I should judge the talent. I would have had no idea. No, like, I know that I'm being Devin Decker sarcastic blah, 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 about it, but, like, no, you really have shown me I've been the one doing it wrong.
Well, and again, it's kind of the problem that any sensible person has with this kind of media, is like this idea that it's garbage. Like, I don't want to call it garbage TV, because a lot of people have done a lot of creative work in these fields to kind of make this consumable product that, let's face it, has changed the face of entertainment. Like, in the last 20 years, the way that reality television has kind of reshaped the way that we like consume, like, all forms of art. Because, as you mentioned, this always eventually leads to a singer winning, which means we eventually lead to at least a single, if not an album. And then on top of that, like, there's all of the merch and everything are centered around just like the audition process. And there's people that legitimately would go onto these things to fail, because that in some way leads to a certain amount of fame. Like, there's so many different. I mean, there's so many levels to this that it's, you can't just call it garbage. It is too well crafted to call it garbage. It's just that it is evil. Like, what's the word here? Like, it's malicious. Like,
it's
television.
Planned obsolescence television.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yes. Yes.
I think that's the thing, because I feel like the term planned obsolescence inherently has an evil tinge to it. Is of, like, it's going to be garbage eventually. Right. But right now it's shiny and new, and I think that calling reality TV planned obsolescence television is, unfortunately, the best term for it. I kind of want to throw up right now at this realization.
Yeah. But any attempt to make it more quote unquote legitimate is going against the whole concept,
Yeah, no, I mean, you have really opened my eye. I wasn't kidding when I said that, because they wouldn't want that. They don't want someone going in there, keeping it real, slinging the truth. They want what they have. They want, this is Howie Mandel, famous comedian, telling you that your talent is good. Even if it's not the greatest, it's good.
Mhm.
And those golden buzzer winners, right? Those have to be ones that, like, the producers have an investment in, regardless of where it comes from. Oh man.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't just point out really quick that like we did used to have a voice like that on American Idol, and it was Simon Cowell. So the fact that like you're watching a neutered version of him on TV should tell you everything you need to know about the wave and about how back in the 2000s when The Office reigned the airwaves, we liked mean people on our shows. Now we don't so much, and so now Simon Cowell is just taking a backseat to Howie Mandel loving everybody. Like so that like that there's your answer as to whether or not your plan would work is we actually have a test case and it's Simon Cowell.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to point out that I don't want to be mean. I want to be constructive. Because I think, I mean, where you're saying like screw all the people and their participation trophies, like I don't think that's it. Like I'm not there. I understand the value of that in a way and how it shaped society going forward from the 90s. Right. But I also think that the offshoot of that is people can't really take criticism anymore. And a lot of the time, criticism, like constructive criticism, when I learned about it in elementary school, I'm like, well, this makes sense. Like, of course, like the criticism you're giving me is trying to help me. Because if you just keep telling me that what I'm doing is good, will it get any better? Is it really good? Or are you just telling me it's good because, I don't know, the state mandated you have to? And I just feel like a lot of these acts, right, where they come in and they're good, but like, what's your next step? There's a next step. We need to see more from you. How does this funny towel dance, like, what more do you do? And Simon Cowell says, I don't know where you go with this. Like, this was very funny. I enjoyed it, but what's your next performance going to be?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm thinking. But like, and that's why this band, I'm like, that was nothing but glowing praise for them. And like, talent wise, yes. Talent show competition wise, not really.
I mean, like, you know, I'm sure there was some like deep cut about like dad lost his job due to the pandemic. This is what we've been doing to keep busy. Now here we are in America's Got Talent. You know, it's like something to that effect, right? Like that has to be the pump up video before they perform.
I don't know. All I know is I don't know that. I don't watch that stuff. I watch the performances because I find the other stuff too overproduced and too meant to draw a reaction. And then, as a result of that, a distraction from me going in unbiased to the performance. and as you've just pointed out, I'm playing it wrong. But guess what? I don't give a shit that I'm playing it wrong. I don't want to be playing it at all. Yeah, America's Got Talent. I'm not interested in you.
Exactly.
Oh, nice, sweet War Games reference that I stepped on.
It's fine. I said exactly what needed to be said. Again, people out there are getting it today. You might not be, but people out there are. Yeah, man. Please tell me that you've been watching better television than America's Got Talent.
Oh, I've been watching much better television than America's Got Talent. Actually, I've been very busy with cinema. I've watched a lot of movies. That's really been how I've entertained myself. And I've done a lot of gaming. And I wouldn't mind sharing either of those, but Sejun, where are you guiding the
well, I want to at least wash my palate out here really quick and just we don't have to get into a deep dive of it yet because it's not over. But the first episode of Loki dropped last week. Like, I as somebody that has spent a lot of my time this week watching and rewatching it, I have to at least mention that.
So the question that I have about Loki, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. In America, because of the nature of broadcast television, right? We have gotten to the fact where you can't judge a 24 episode sitcom on its first episode. And that's right. Where the 4 episode test comes in.
Right.
For a show like Loki that's going to have 6 episodes, is it based on the first episode? Is that why, like, I know you love it. You have talked my ear off about how much you've enjoyed Loki. I will say that I devoured it. It was like, it was so delicious. It was
dense.
everything I wanted it to be and more.
Mm-hmm.
And yesterday it inspired a conversation that I didn't think the Marvel Cinematic Universe would be able to inspire ever. Between my mother and I.
Yeah.
That was about how I mean, like, I don't know how much we talk about Loki, right? Like, there's only the 1 episode right now.
Yeah. Like I said, I don't want to dive too deep into like parsing apart everything that's in it. But I mean, like, you know, initial reactions, like what did your family think of it? As a family that, on the one hand, I know do not like worship at the altar of Marvel like most people do. Okay, 50% of this podcast does. But like, on the other hand, like, you guys did all just sit down and watch the entire universe in the last like 2 months. So like I'm curious to know how they reacted to it.
Well, Dale was a big fan. I'll get Dale's out of the way. She really enjoyed it. My father, he didn't like it. He goes back to, I really liked the first 3 episodes of WandaVision. And then, like, I'm done with this. And
that's great. That's phenomenal.
I understand. I know why you're coming from that position, Dad. And then my mother, like, she's like, I still think that the Falcon and Winter Soldier show is the best thing that they've done. Right? I know it's just the first episode, but after that first episode, my initial reaction is this. And then she had a big question about, and I don't understand what the issue is. If they're just going to reset the timeline, why is it a problem that he exists? Because he's just going to be reset. And that's what inspired the conversation about, I mean, my favorite part about the whole overarching storyline, like, I'm talking meta on meta on meta, like 3 levels of meta, is that the TVA, or the Time Variance Authority, they're essentially Kevin Feige and Joe Quesada saying this is and this isn't what's going to be a part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. So one of my favorite things that's in the DNA of that first episode, at least, and I hope continues throughout the rest of the show, is Loki is clearly the show where they're going to lay the law down about what is going to remain quote unquote canon, what is going to be considered the true timeline, things like that. I mean, like that can't be ignored. So I love that. But in terms of why does it matter? I think that's an interesting question because, one, I don't think we know yet. And I think that's going to be I think that's one of the many questions the show will address. I won't say answer, but will address. And the other part of that is, like, on the grand scheme of things, that is correct. But, like, I think one of the big questions whenever that comes up, and that always comes up in time travel stories, right, is on the idea of the individual. I mean, like, why does that matter? Well, it matters to Loki because he won't be dead. Like yes, his essence will in a sense still exist in the timeline and blah 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 blah. But Loki in that moment being asked that question would say, I would die.
Yeah. That instance, that culmination of events ceases to be. And it was very interesting when I had the conversation with my mother because she's like, if you could try to explain it to me, like why they're doing it. And I said, well, before you flip a coin, right, there are minimum 2 possibilities, heads or tails. And then you flip the coin and it's heads. And she goes, that's it. That's the only universe. And I'm like, so you do understand it. You understand where they're coming from because for you, once it lands on heads, that's all you're going to know. Right?
Yeah. You will never know a universe in which it landed on tails.
Right. So that's it, Mod. That's the thing. But that universe that landed on tails has the possibility of happening. And what the TVA does is just eliminates it as soon as heads falls because that's what they said was supposed to occur.
According to them, right.
In accordance with them. Which really, and I'm going to use the word now, makes them kind of a fascist organization.
Oh yeah, no, they are not the good guys. I mean, anytime you put a bunch of people in black uniforms with like melty sticks, you're not making the good guys.
Exactly. But that's
Yeah.
the thing. But once I put it in those terms, I think it helped her to understand the whole Muggugah of it. Muggugah. Oh God, I hate it. I hate myself because that's the name of this episode now.
But yeah, but I mean, like, but that's the whole Muggugah. But yeah, I mean, the idea that like what gives them the right to be the authority on this decision making is one that Loki asks in the episode, and I think that is going to be definitely addressed. Like, yeah, I think it's always really interesting to me because you always present these ideas of reasons why shows have issues, and I'm not, and this is not even coming out of your mouth, but every time my reaction is always just like, uh-huh, like, yep, that is the point of the show.
Right.
Like yeah, I agree. Like what is the big deal is definitely a fair question, but to me that's intriguing and makes me want to watch it. And I think that's where sometimes we have to kind of readjust ourselves, right? Is it's not that other people don't quote unquote get it. It's that they get it just fine. It's just that context to them means that they have different feelings about getting it.
Right. And again, I don't think I think it's my favorite thing. Where I struggle, right, is that third level of meta in the
Hmm.
fact that this is how events are supposed to happen, but from our outside universe where Kevin Feige and Joe Quesada and all those people in charge of the Marvel Cinematic Universe live, right? And are the gods of this fictional universe, they're allowing the timeline of Loki picking up the Tesseract to exist. So, like, also that means that was kind of supposed to happen. And I'm just like, see, I need to stop because if I just keep thinking on top of itself, it'll be friends, but they don't know that they don't know, and I can't do that because you can
Yeah.
just do stacks on stacks on stacks. But I got there in the unfortunate conversation with Dale, where like her big issue is the TVA allowed the Avengers to pull off the time heist. And I'm like, yeah, I know that bothers, but is what has to happen for the MCU to exist the way they want the MCU to exist.
Yeah,
And
but we know that they allow minimal amounts of time travel in order to quote unquote correct the time stream. I'm sure that they just view what the Avengers did as just a larger uh enaction of that, right? Like what the Avengers did was on a grand scale what their agents do every time they go out and kill somebody or stop something from happening, right?
right, I
Like it's
mean,
no different than what they do on a regular basis. I'm not saying that it's not that what the Avengers did should not face consequences, bad, good, like that's a whole other conversation. What I'm saying, what I'm addressing is why would the TVA allow them to do that? Because it's what the TVA does.
exactly. Yeah,
That's their entire thing.
and that was my explanation to Dale. That was my whole thing. It's like, well, that's what they do. Is just instead of having to get their hands dirty with it, the Avengers go out and do it. So they're not risking agents. They have the Avengers there, and if the Avengers screw up, like they do with Loki getting a hold of the Tesseract, the TVA is there to catch any flotsam and jetsam of the time heist,
Yeah.
really. And I'm like, so it works that way. But then I introduce that third thing, and she's like, you're making my head hurt. And I'm like, I'm making my head hurt. Because I'm trying to. There's a reason why eventually in Inception, they just wind up on the beach.
Yeah, right. Because it's a vast ocean that we will never truly know. It's the most on the nose metaphor in that movie, at least. Nolan's good at those, though. But yeah, I mean, I think, and we don't have to go any deeper than this, but I think the larger question for me is in all of that conversation is what is quote unquote supposed to mean and who gets to decide that? Because that in and of itself is an authoritative statement that doesn't necessarily have to exist. So there's like a whole other level of just like, it's not who's allowed to do what, who's allowed to do what, who's allowed to do what does allow mean, and who's allowing it.
Right. And I feel like just to look forward to what we know is going to happen, that's kind of where Kang the Conqueror is like, who gives you three the authority? I
Yeah.
want the authority. I have a purple face.
But we also know the other big thing to point out in all of this is we also know that the idea of the multiverse isn't going anywhere. This isn't gonna resolve a lot of issues, and it's definitely not going to resolve what the Avengers did. We're still looking forward to multiverse of madness with Doctor Strange. We're still looking at Spider-Man and what's its home? No Way Home. What's the name of the
Yeah, No Way Home.
No Way Home? I got it. Okay, yeah. So like we're already looking at two movies that are also going to deal with this.
Yeah, and I think this is how they opened the door, and I'm just waiting, fingers crossed, for the footage from another universe. You show me Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man on some monitor in the TVA, or Andrew Garfield as Spider-Man in some monitor in the TVA. That's what I'm waiting for. And I'm waiting to see how whatever Loki's doing is what causes the multiverse to erupt.
Yep.
And I think that's what's going to happen. Again, these are all just predictions and theories delivered from us. Too early to tell. But then also, if we waited till 4 episodes to talk about it, like we do with most things, I'm reminded of Walker earlier this year. It's one of those situations where there'll only be 2 episodes left.
Yeah.
So like,
we might as well just wait till the end.
If it's a 24 episode season and you judge based on 4 episodes, if it's a 6 episode season, you kind of have to judge off of the first episode. So like, as much as my father's like, I'm not feeling it, I get that. Because there's only 5 more episodes for them to change your mind.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they're going to be able to do that in 5 more episodes.
I don't know,
I hope they are. I know that he's still going to watch it with us. But you know, he doesn't really like the science fiction-y stuff. It's Star Trek. That's what he says. And I'm like, it's not really Star Trek. I don't like. I
mean, it's kind of Star Trek when you start getting into like newer Star Trek and all that. But anyway,
right. Well, I think there's a reason why it says it. But then the discussion that I had with my mother is the fact that she doesn't understand why she loves the Orville. My mother loves the Orville. And I'm like, well, Loki's a really good way to explain that. Or even like Falcon and Winter Soldier, you don't really care about the situations that they're in. These shows make you care about the characters first, and then because you're invested in the characters, you're there for the characters, not really for what they're doing. And she's
like, it can't be denied that between the Orville and Falcon and Winter Soldier, there's also a very nice string of like
right.
just debate and morality and political like screenwriting and stuff like that.
Right.
So,
but if she didn't care about Ed Mercer and Bortus and that on Orville, I think she would have just written it off as Star Trek. It's just Star Trek, the way that my father did. So what that says to me is that Loki, the myriad of characters that they introduced, none of them really connected with him. Whereas something like WandaVision, those first 3 episodes, that world connected with him.
Yeah.
And then once that world went away, that's why he no longer cared for the show. And I'm like, I get it. They thought they sold you a bill of goods. I'd like to get back to planned obsolescence television quickly, like brief.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's tie it all together. We never do that.
Well, this morning, my father, in order to pass the time, put on a compilation video of all the Robin Sparkles things from How I Met Your Mother. And
why?
I don't.
What?
I couldn't tell you. And he refuses to come on the show.
Hole. And this is somebody that's down there with him. He's got to get out of this stuff.
I don't disagree with you, Sejan. It's becoming. It gets to the point where I just got to walk away because what he does on YouTube, I struggle to understand. I honestly, and I'm just like, I can't watch or listen to it anymore. But so he put that on. And first of all, that whole saga of Robin Sparkles, the more it goes on, the less it makes any fucking sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that she was on a Canada-themed Behind the Music, but you can barely find any copies of the second video, Sandcastles in the Sand, in a world where the internet exists.
Right.
Like, no, someone would have put it up there. Or like when they go to the Minnesota bar in New York and the karaoke night, they're sing Let's Go to the Mall and everybody knows it. Like that show lost that thread. But then thinking of like planned obsolescence television, How I Met Your Mother was originally planned to be over in a season.
A season, or I thought it was one of those 5-season shows.
They had planned for a season.
Okay.
They had a plan for the first season, because they've talked about it, where they're like, we had always intended the mother to be the cupcake girl, Vanessa, I believe her name is.
Okay, yeah.
If this was the only season that we got. If we found out with enough time to tie it up after the one season, that was our plan. And what I hear from that is, so you guys had the first season planned out. That's what I take away from that.
And they could I don't want to get into any of this like fucking they didn't know how to write Star Wars bullshit. Like, but the idea being like with TV, the idea of having a concept that you want to write about, but knowing you could get canceled after one season, I think admitting they had an out is, to me, says that they were better prepared than underprepared.
Okay, well,
they like, and then from there, like we banged out the season 2. Then we banged out. They clearly lost the thread eventually, and that's where I think I've heard the 5-season thing is that they had never really like conceptually planned more than 5 seasons, and so that's why the later seasons are fucking madness.
I don't know. We've devoted too much attention to How I Met Your Mother on this, but to tie it together, that's why reality TV is so appealing. Its planned obsolescence is never going to go more than a season. It is
an episode, depending on what you're watching. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, that's the thing. So that's why reality TV really has become the king of the boob tube, because it is planned obsolescence, and that is what is more valuable in American like economic ideals. And I really just want to throw up as all of this is coming out of my mouth. I'm sorry.
So I was gonna try and use Loki as a segue into talking about more streaming.
I'm fine with that. No, go for it.
And then we kind of varied off there. But yeah. So in terms of streaming stuff this month, Disney has kind of had its fair share of some things that, and we talked a little bit about the idea that like they are kind of probably coming to an end of their only like same day $30 nonsense. We don't really see many plans for that past Black Widow, possibly. What was the
Jungle
other one
Cruise is the last one that they've announced day and stream release.
Right. So like they may not, whether or not things are going to be free, whether or not things are going to cost $30, like that is all kind of up in the air for Disney. Which is interesting because for a long time they were just like, we're riding this train till it fucking goes to hell. Like, but on the other side of that coin was HBO and Warner Brothers, who very openly said like, after this date, we are no longer doing this. This is just to get us through this year as a family. Like we're gonna buckle down and just deal with this for a little bit. But here's what we're gonna do. And we have seen quite a number of actual films coming out of that deal, which I think that's the really interesting thing to me more than anything about the differences between the two of them is whereas like Disney seems to be like whole hog in the idea and people are very focused on Disney and their approach to it. We seem to all quietly just be like letting HBO Warner Brothers just go to fucking town with this plan. I mean, you sent me a list of what was it, 8 movies, Dev?
9 movies.
Yeah, like that's nuts. Like, and that's only what they've done so far. You only sent me a list of the things they have done till now.
Right, and by all accounts, there should be 8 more films because the whole talk was that we have 17 films that we are committed to bringing to you in theater and on HBO Max the day that they release.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that number may have changed because one of the films on our list is not in any of those initial articles. So I don't know what it is, but it's not an HBO Max original. It's not like an American Pickle or a Snyder cut of Justice League. It is a
Right.
film that they had intended to release to theaters, and then they're like, oh, well, things still aren't great. Let's also add this one to HBO Max the same day.
Yeah, well, and I think that that's I mean, I think that that's to their credit that they have given themselves that flexibility by having such a large list of already expected films to go that way and openly saying like we're going to stop this at a certain point. It kind of gives them the freedom in this year to just kind of throw caution to the wind and just do what they feel needs to get done in a moment's notice, which is probably why they did it, right? Like that's probably part of the math when they said, look, 2022, we're not doing this shit anymore, but 2021 is Wild West. It's buck wild. It can be whatever we need it to be. We're just going to accept those losses here and now. And then from that frees them to do these things. Yeah, man.
I mean, also, and the one that I'm talking about there is Those Who Wish Me Dead, the Angelina Jolie film that left HBO Max yesterday. June 13th was the last day to watch it on HBO Max. And then it'll be back in like 3 or 4 months, the same way that now Wonder Woman 84 is back.
Right.
But Wonder Woman 84 of these films is the only one that released on December 25th and is now back able to be watched on HBO Max.
For the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's, yeah.
So, I mean, and then that's the thing. And I don't know if the fact that Wonder Woman 84 didn't perform as well as they had hoped with both of them, I don't know the thought process behind it. Probably because this is also HBO Max is sort of the new DC universe. So they want to make sure that everything DC is available on it. But I can't speak any more to that one.
Yeah, I mean, but they've even gone so far as to include some of the Vertigo pictures, like Losers and Jonah Hex, which I love. Like, I'm so excited to like dig into some of their weirder ones.
I tried to watch The Losers on Wednesday, and 40 minutes into the movie, I got yelled at because it was too loud and it was 1 a.m, and I felt bad. But also, I was disappointed because 40 minutes into The Losers, stuff's just about to kick off. I mean, love the movie The Losers.
Yeah, I love that movie.
That's
And
such
the
a
back
good
half
film.
of that movie, which
Yeah.
is what you were about to run into, is like just one large action sequence. Oh
I'm
man.
like, this is too loud. Like, I feel like I know, like I've been adjusting. But God, The Losers, that's a movie we should talk about sometime. But in terms of HBO Max, Disney Plus is going to be dropping Luca, a Pixar film, for free this coming Friday.
As they've done with the past
With
Pixar
other
films.
Pixar films, yes.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to look at is In the Heights dropped on the 11th of June, and it is the last one of a 6 months, beginning with December 25th for Wonder Woman 84. This is the first 6 months of them trying this. And I wanted to look at those movies and I don't know, see which ones worked, which ones didn't. A lot of the criticisms I've heard about these films is that they were safe to drop onto HBO Max because they probably wouldn't have performed very well. And I think that was easy to say about the early ones, like where that criticism happened, because they were probably movies that would have released just after award season.
Yes, exactly. Like we okay. Let's list the movies first, and then we'll get into this because I think you and I are on the exact same page about timing and things like that. But starting with Wonder Woman 84 at Christmas, like that was the first one, right? Then early January is when we had the Little Things. When did Judas and the Black Messiah come out? Was that February? Or
It was
that...
February. It was early February. First week in February it came out.
And then we had the live action animated movie Tom and Jerry. Then
at
we
the
had
end of February.
And then we had Godzilla versus Kong.
Yep.
Which was early March, right? And then Mortal Kombat was early April. Those Who Wish Me Dead only came out 3 weeks ago, didn't it?
It came out 4 weeks ago.
4
because
weeks
it had
ago.
a month. So a month.
Okay.
It came out on, I'm guessing May 13th.
Yeah, that meant
maybe May 12th.
But then within the last couple of weeks, we've had The Conjuring 3, Devil Made Me Do It, and In the Heights, which was just last week. So in that order, right? I think that what you just said is totally right. If you look at these things as releases within theaters, they probably still would have released in theaters in the exact same fashion, the exact same order, and they probably would have received a lot of the same criticism, but we would have removed the whole conversation of whether or not they were quote unquote safe for streaming, and rather would have been talking about these were the perfect January February releases of these films, right? Like there's just we've always talked about how though that's kind of the dumping ground for a lot of projects that maybe didn't quite meet the grandeur of their intention, right? And to that, like, we've seen some people take advantage of that, like Deadpool and things like that, where they're like, well, if nothing else good is going to come out, let's drop our shit and take over, right? And we could definitely talk about whether or not we saw that anywhere, but I just I don't like the idea that they just were like, quick, we've got HBO Max and it's a pandemic, just push out all the shit you can't. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Movies take a long time to make, people. Like, these things were in the works for a while, and some of them were filmed and edited and all of this stuff throughout the idea of the pandemic and all this. But to say that for these 9 movies alone, not to mention whatever else comes out this year, that they were somehow like saved until this year to release, it'd be totally different if we were talking about a movie that had been made 5 years ago and they've been fucking just sitting on the can for 5 years and didn't know what to do with it, and then here it is, surprise, it's the middle of winter and here it is. Like, that doesn't work for me.
No, I think what it is it's not
Wasn't
so
The
much.
Witches one of these?
The Witches was an HBO Max original. That was in October of last year. That was never planned for theaters.
Okay.
And I think I understand why, too. Having watched it, I enjoy it, but it was the kind of thing that could drive people to that platform, not the kind of thing that would drive people to the theater.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. But I mean, also, the original Witches was also out and available, so it was a way that you could catch up and then watch the new one. That one I actually have more where, like, I understand why this was HBO Max original and not theater, in terms of sort of like Hamilton and Disney Plus. Mm-hmm. I don't know if the Disney Plus Hamilton, if it had released in theaters this year like they had planned, would have done that well. Because they were planning on releasing it against In the Heights to pit Lin-Manuel Miranda against Lin-Manuel Miranda.
That's weird. But I think you're a fool if you bet against Hamilton in any form. But
In the Heights was being worked on. John Chu got it immediately after Crazy Rich Asians.
Yeah.
And then Disney had been smart enough to scoop up Hamilton, and that's why they were willing to just show their film as a performance that had been taped and not a remade movie, because they wanted to get it out there, and they knew that everybody would bet on Hamilton. And not...
Yeah, but I mean, when they did the Disney Night recording of that show, all those... it was a year and a half ago at this point. I just like people were the second that they announced that they were recording that, like, people just lost their shit and have been waiting for it. So the on-stage version that we saw on Disney Plus, I think definitely would have been the in-theaters version that we would have seen. And as I said, like, people were already abuzz about whenever that was going to come out. Like, how could they get their hands on it? So, like, it would be, as I said, foolish to bet against Hamilton in any way.
Right, but I think
Disney Plus's numbers alone that month prove that.
Right, no, I understand that. But that's why they did it that way. They did it that way so that they could drop it against In the Heights.
I had always I was under the impression that it was supposed to be a October movie last year, November, like basically award season movie last year, and they had moved it up 3 months because they were just like, fuck it, everybody's home, and it was just kind of a way to get everybody onto the platform. But maybe they would have held onto it for a year.
I mean, I don't know. I know that it got shifted around because of and a lot of the shifting seemed to be related to the In the Heights stuff. And then when they're like, well, In the Heights is not coming out in theaters this year, we don't know what we're going to do with it. They're like, oh, we're going to release Hamilton then. And we're going to, and it worked out for them. I mean, again, that's just based on what I've read and what I've seen, but the whole thing, because you're not wrong, as soon as they said this is the Disney recording, of course that was the version you were going to see in theaters. I don't think they were ever working on a full film adaptation of the musical the way that In the Heights is, but it feels like that was Disney's way to be like, fuck you, Warner Brothers, we're gonna steal your thunder. And then we're also going to own the rights to it so that we can do a musical film adaptation of this story.
Yeah, when everybody's looking the other way, they'll drop that sometime in the next year or two.
Yeah. But yeah, and that's the thing. But now that we're here in the summer, right? Like, first of all, Little Things and Judas and the Black Messiah end up benefiting from the fact that they release in January and February because the cutoff to be eligible for the Academy Awards gets extended as well.
Yep.
So Daniel Kaluuya as the Black Messiah, I can't think of the character, the real person's name right now. He ends up getting nominated, as does Jared Leto for his role in The Little Things. So like that was a gamble that paid off, because those films, they looked at them as like, we tried to make these as award bait, but I don't think they're going to work up against everything else. And that's that dumping ground of January, February.
Right.
So that makes sense. But then, like, the people who judged it, like, I think this came to HBO Max because it wouldn't have done well in theaters anyway. Like, it's like, well, I mean, kind of that's the thought process. But you're thinking about monetarily. They were thinking critically. Critically, this wouldn't get the award notice against all of the other things in the water.
Yeah, and then in a weird way, it's like you came in at the end of the conversation, like, well, yes, based on if the timeline that we were looking at was just 2021, yes, but if you consider going back over the last 8 months of cinema and then look at it, you'd realize no, like these were clearly movies that they would have put out in November, but realized they didn't have the faith in it, pushed it back late, and then whoops, hey, look at that, award season got extended, and like you said, they lucked out.
They kind of like, so those two, and those were the ones that I saw the most criticism levied against by like regular moviegoers. Wonder Woman 84, like, while a lot of people didn't really enjoy that film, it kind of had sequel issue, right? With the fact that it had to live up to Wonder Woman.
Well, and in terms of release time, like just to keep it in this conversation, Wonder Woman, the sequel coming out on Christmas Day of that year, happening, and then being able to say, no matter what, you will get to see Wonder Woman on Christmas, was like a no-brainer. Like, that had nothing to do with quality at all. They just knew this is when this movie needs to exist in the world, right?
Right. And then Tom and Jerry, right? As good as the human elements of Tom and Jerry was a pretty solid story, and then a Tom and Jerry cartoon would happen like
around them,
and yeah, exactly. It was, and it was good enough, and like that's the sad thing. Like the girl with imposter syndrome trying to survive in New York City, like that was a good story. But then also her having to deal with a cartoon mouse and cat trying to kill each other is a weird flick. But that one specifically, I don't think people would have watched if it wasn't available on HBO Max to then levy those complaints against. Because it's a kid's film. It was for your kids to go see. It wasn't for us all to watch because it was free on HBO Max.
Right, and it's not to say that like kids movies can't be good. Like we know like kids movies can have artistic merit to them. We just also know that a lot of people that make kids movies recognize that they don't have to if they don't want to. And Tom and Jerry feels very much like one of those movies where you had like 2 or 3 people that really cared about the project and everybody else was just there making a buck.
Tom and Jerry was an interesting watch.
Yeah,
certainly. Weird. And then Godzilla vs. Kong, which kind of kicks it all off, right? The culmination of the kaiju verse, right? Because you can't, I mean, I guess the monster verse, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, I was saying the monster verse, but I didn't want to say that. But then when Universal was going to have their dark universe, that's what it was called. Yeah. Maybe if they had called it the Monsterverse, it would have done better.
The Monster Mashaverse.
Oh my God. Stop. People still don't know that there's a Tom Cruise mummy movie. Like, that's a conversation I have with people. It's like, yeah, Tom Cruise's mummy movie.
I think
the
like, Carl Urban Dracula movie is more lost to time, but yeah.
Carl Urban? What?
Isn't he?
No, it's Luke Evans.
Oh no, it's Luke Evans. Yeah. I get the two of them mixed up in my head. They both play this very similar, like smoldering white guy role.
I get it, but I'm
Luke Evans is the one that's in Star Trek, right?
No, that's Carl Urban. I've never seen Star Trek, but even I know that. I've also seen not Wrath of Khan, and
Wrath of Khan.
and Beyond, which
Star
also
Trek
feature
dot
him.
dot dot but Wrath of Khan. Yeah. So Godzilla versus Kong comes along, and from what I understand, that movie does exactly what it was supposed to do. A lot of people that were very interested in that franchise, either franchise, watching them come together, from what I understand, enjoyed themselves with it. I have heard kind of like I've heard very bland things about that movie, but to be honest, I'm not the guy that movie is for.
I mean, Godzilla King of the Monsters. First of all, Kong Skull Island, of the 4 films that comprise that little universe right now, is the best movie.
And for all for just to Kong, Peter Jackson's Kong from years ago is not part of this,
No, that's
right?
King Kong, and no, it's not part of it. It starts with the 2014 Godzilla.
What is this? Donkey Kong? Is this not King Kong that we're talking about?
Right, but the name of that film is King Kong. It's not just
right,
Kong. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that.
I understand, but it's a Kong movie. If I say that in this context of this conversation, you know what I mean, right?
I don't know. There are a lot of Kongs. Donkey Kong, Diddy Kong, Dixie Kong.
You told me for 1 second that fucking Lanky Kong showed up in Godzilla versus Kong, I would turn off this podcast right now and go watch it.
Well, so I gotta be honest with you. There is a sad scene where King Kong, his whole motivation is to get back home to the kingdom that he was to get. He has to beat up King K. Rool. No, he's trying to get back home, right?
Right.
They realize that they find out from Godzilla that Godzilla can like echolocate to where he's going, and they surmise that Kong might have the same ability, and the only reason that he hasn't left Skull Island is because they've trapped him there. So if we allow him off of Skull Island, he might be able to lead them to his home world. And if he gets back to his home world, we might find a way to battle against Godzilla. That's like a real part of this movie.
Okay.
And so you get to Kong gets to his homeland, and every other Kong is dead. So like that could be Donkey Kong and Lanky Kong and Chunky Kong.
Oh man.
Like that's and now
it's just one
King
line there
Kong.
with a bandana and a surfboard, and he just starts crying.
Funky Kong left the planet. If
know.
anybody got away, it's Funky Kong.
I'm just imagining Funky Kong as the Silver Surfer, and I need that now.
Oh my god! I mean, like that. I want that to be the new Donkey Kong game. Is that he has been chosen as the herald of a Galactus-esque figure.
Galactus K. Rool.
Oh man, we
Shit.
off the. But yeah,
but this is what Godzilla versus Kong. That's exactly what I was saying.
Exactly.
This is what this movie has done for everybody that I've talked to about it. Is 2 seconds after they bring up that they saw it, we are instantly talking about something else.
Yeah, that's a good point. Then Mortal Kombat comes around, and it's good, but it has that issue of this film is thinking more about the sequel. We're trying to build a universe with this movie, which that's been a weird syndrome of films in 2021. A lot of people say that like Without Remorse was guilty of that as well, where like very obviously this is supposed to be the first movie in a series.
Yeah. I mean, Without Remorse is also a weird one because it's very much the Jack Reacher, like Jack Ryan, Jack everybody, but like the idea that yes, like it's a Tom Clancy mainline hero that is going to go on to have 7, 8, 9, 10 books that we're going to get to watch, and at some point we'll all talk about who the new actor is going to be to play him after Michael B. Jordan plays him for 5 movies and things like that. Like I don't disagree that that's in that movie, but if you watched that movie and thought it was going to be anything but that, like you
went in there with the wrong expectations.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna skip those that wish me dead right now, because that I have God, that movie's really good. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, easily the best Conjuring film.
Okay. Interesting. I have heard from many a Conjuring fan some disappointment. Overall, people seem really excited that they are still making those movies, and like, and any horror franchise that can survive nowadays, I think deserves like all of the fandom that it gets. But you're the first person I've heard that has labeled it quote unquote the best.
Well, can I tell you why I think it's the best? Huge spoilers for The Conjuring: The Devil Made Me Do It.
Mhm.
They're fighting against another human.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
And I can
I
see if you're the person who watches those for the whole supernatural of it all, right? Like where they're dealing with ghosts.
yeah. Well,
Um,
and so the Conjuring universe is really interesting to me because of the fact that it is somewhat based on true stories in
Yeah.
that have, and so my understanding of this one is this was the first time that the actual couple in real life had been used in any type of like legal trial sense to like really kind of like come in and disprove something, like a fucking like sponsor from the Vatican coming to disprove a miracle style, like they this so I was always kind of interested in the idea that I like this would be a human doing this, because that's their whole like shtick, is that they come in and it's not that they disbelieve, they don't believe, I guess they both
no,
do.
they're ready to believe you.
They're ready to believe, but they don't at the drop of a hat. Like they need proof, they need evidence. That's what's always made them really interesting heroes.
They're
So I'm
Ghostbusters
very happy
without
to
proton packs.
yeah,
Like
I'm
without a
very
doubt.
happy to hear this revelation, because it had to happen eventually, and might as well rip the Band-Aid off and do it number 3, right?
And that's why I dug it, because as much the first Conjuring movie, when I watched it, I really enjoyed it, but I'm like, but like it's one of those ones where is it or isn't it? Like you don't know. And then The Conjuring 2 went way the other direction, where like fucking demons are real. Like we're leaving the country because there's demons in America. And also they were real clever in the first Conjuring movie with like how they parsed out information.
Yeah.
Conjuring 2, like it's the nun, right? So it's like the nun myth and fable of like,
But it's not the nun though, right?
no,
It's just that this is where she's really leaned into,
right.
and then eventually she
And
gets
then
her
that
own
character gets her own movie, still in the Conjuring verse, but more about it. And the way that they end up having to defeat her is by they have to say her name. It's a Rumpelstiltskin analog, right? It's how that one was Americanized in a lot of weird ways. Is the story of the nun, and her name was like everywhere throughout the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And like and like almost as the way that you're supposed to understand. Right now we're not in the real world, we're in like a between the dimensions sort of vision that Lorraine Warren is having. So like that's how they did it. But then it's like, but then when that is how you solve the movie, like it's like, well, that's just a kick in the pants. Like that wasn't fun.
Yeah.
You guys didn't like say it one time at the very beginning, and then
even just talking to each other about what you saw, like you didn't compare notes and say it out loud once. Like what?
Like it's just one of those things where I'm like, okay. So then this one comes along, and it's a nice balance between the two. But then the fact that in the end, the person that is responsible for everything is someone else trying to harness the dark arts I'm like, that's awesome, because that has to be the next logical step. Right? I talk a lot about the reason why the Fantastic Four movies failed is because in the second movie they save the Earth, and where do you go from there?
Yeah, exactly. What's the next big thing?
It's also why like Die Hard 4 and 5 didn't work, because John McClane already saved the world from an asteroid in Armageddon. And don't try to tell me that that's not John McClane. After the events of Harlem, he went into witness protection and became a miner.
Yeah, but then how do you explain him getting blown up on the asteroid? It's okay.
They kept a copy of his DNA and they created another John McClane.
They created him so that he could be on America's Got Talent.
It's called Aliens Resurrection. John McClane was the first one resurrected using that program. It all makes sense.
And then he comes back, and he comes back to be on America's Got Talent as the artist Bruno.
Don't do that. No Bruno references. We've talked about this. That's the one thing that my magic cannot protect us from.
Honking on Bruno. That was a thing he did.
I have a cassette tape of Bruno.
Oh
That's like a real. I'm afraid of it. I'm afraid that if I ever play it, I will be taken by the soul of Bruno. I should give that to the Warrens. And then In the Heights comes out.
Yeah, In the Heights happened. This is the end of that story, right? But like, I just so In the Heights has come out, big hit so far. It's the one that I have definitely not seen any of, like not by choice. I would like to see it. We have plans to see it on Thursday night. We're doing a sushi and a movie night.
Nice.
But yeah, so In the Heights is out and from all accounts is just a blast. But yeah, so talk to me about those that wish me dead.
If I were going to rank the 9 HBO Max movies that have come out over the last 6 months, Those That Wish Me Dead would be my number 1 film.
Interesting.
Because, oh my God.
That's rad. That's
just
awesome.
Because it's one of those films that don't get made anymore. Like, it is 100%. I mean, it's based on a book, so I will say that right from the beginning. But I think it's based on a standalone book, not a book in a series.
Yeah, that's odd.
Right. I think that the writer just wrote it and then whatever. And I want to read the original book to see if it goes anywhere from there. But it feels like the kind of 90s movies that we got where it'd be a big action showcase and then it would just be over and you'd live in that action showcase. Like it reminded me of Commando. It reminded me of Witness in this way that, like, this is awesome that this film exists.
I mean, it very much gave me, and so correct me if I'm wrong here, but it gave me some very heavy Rambo vibes, like First Blood specifically.
Yes.
Out in the woods and all that sort of stuff.
That's a wonderful... it gave me a lot of Firestorm vibes. I don't know if you remember the movie Firestorm. Not Backdraft, the one that everybody saw, but Firestorm, the film that I saw 4 times in theaters.
Is Firestorm the one about the arsonist, right? Because Backdraft isn't a specific person, is it?
Backdraft is about... They're both about arsonists.
Okay.
But
I didn't remember
Firestorm
Backdraft
is
having
set...
a particular person that was setting the fires. I thought it was just random fires.
I gotta
rewatch Backdraft.
I haven't seen Backdraft I've never seen Backdraft, but the whole the arsonist who sets his own fires for heroics trope comes from Backdraft.
Okay. That's now I'm remembering. Yeah. Okay.
Where Firestorm, the fire is set in order to cover the escape from a heist, and then they have to deal with a big motherfucking fire. And the reason why that movie sticks with me is it opens up with, at 500 degrees, trees will explode. At 800 degrees, rocks will explode. And regularly inside of a forest fire, the temperatures can reach as high as 1,200 degrees.
That's none of that is true. Is it true?
I don't know. I mean, paper burns. I mean, Fahrenheit 451, the reason it's called Fahrenheit 451 is because that's the temperature that paper burns at.
But we all know that Ray Bradbury spent many a day just putting books in the oven and just cranking it 1 degree at a time until it burst.
I mean, that's true. That's actually what Ray Bradbury did. I don't know if that's true, but if you're going to write a book and you're going to call it The Temperature at Which Books Burn, like, you do the work. Like, there's a reason why it's not just 450 degrees.
But that's a much easier title. The Temperature at Which Books Burn by Ray Bradbury.
Flammable knowledge or inflammable knowledge. They mean the same thing, Dad. But yeah, Those That Wish Me Dead. So my goal is to watch everything that comes out free on HBO Max, right? Even if I'm not really interested in it, but because it's such an interesting, like, moment in our lifetimes. Like, and I want to say I was there for it.
And you mean in terms of movies?
Yes, not... Yeah. I mean, these specific day and date releases that are simultaneous. I don't want to miss any of them. Do you think I want to watch Dune? I'm like the one guy who doesn't like Dune, and I understand that. But I'm
Yeah, but
going to
your
watch
boyfriend's
the
in it,
movie.
so we'll be fine.
I don't know how I feel about that. Who's my boyfriend? Is it Timothy Chalamet?
No, Dave Bautista.
Oh,
Like it's
okay.
one of his. It's like it was the whole thing that started his whole thing about why he thinks he's better than Dwayne Johnson.
Is because I'm going to be in Dune?
Was his exact words were, "I like to try and act."
To which I say, Dave Bautista, have you seen Vin Diesel in the
Mm.
original promotional video for Street Sharks?
Oh man, I believe he was just addressing the idea of moving from wrestling into acting. So it really would be more about like talking about like John Cena or The Miz.
I can't contribute any more to this, and I'm very sad about that.
Shit. Anybody that's ever, if you're ever in for a good time, part of the terrible Christmas watching every year is the Mrs. Christmas movie, produced by the WWE. But yeah, no, Dave Bautista is very excited to be in Dune, and I think are they intending to make a series out of it? I'm trying to remember if they're gonna like blow it out. Anyway,
They just want to get Dune out there, and they want to see how people react.
yeah,
But it is one
because
of
there's a
those
lot
ones
they can do.
where if they could do the whole series of books, they would do the whole series of books.
Yeah, and he's just very excited to be involved in it because he feels like it's going to be an opportunity for him to really start to become the actor that he wants to be. I'm being very generous because he was being very mean when he was explaining this kind of stuff.
That doesn't surprise me. I still love Dave Bautista, and I get why you called him my boyfriend. But that's ridiculous. That's so weird. You think?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, man.
All right. So I think
yeah,
that's everything that I have to say
all.
about HBO Max right now. The next one is Space Jam, which, God, that's gonna have a whole episode, isn't it, Sejin? You're gonna make me do a whole Space Jam episode.
We might have to do a very special episode on the first one, and then I don't know. We'll see. We'll see.
Oh, we will see. I don't know, man. It just feels so much like Ready Player One with all of the other properties that are getting slammed into it.
Yeah,
I'm
but
a little nervous.
I feel like it's going to be more like Lego Movie style because Warner Brothers has already done that where they address that stuff, and I hope it goes better that way.
Yeah, I mean, especially Looney Tunes back in action. I think we've had this exact conversation. They did a really good job at blending universes with like the Triffid and the monster from Forbidden Planet. Like, so they kind of know what they're doing
And
when
the
it comes
Dalek.
to doing that. That's right, the Dalek. I forget that they own the Daleks. Can you ever own a Dalek? Yes, I have an action figure on my desk. Just to answer the question, I'd like to share some video game stuff, if you will indulge me,
Yeah, please do.
as we say goodbye. I'm going to start with Biomutant, the game that disappointed everybody, and it didn't disappoint me until the end.
Oh man,
Uh,
what happened at the end of that game?
So, wonderful exploration game in terms of just here's a big map, find everything. That was awesome. Wonderful in terms of you have to unite these 6 tribes and you have to either defeat or tame the World Eaters.
Okay.
I mean, real Breath of the Wild energy there. I'm going to be honest with you. The World Eaters are like the divine beasts, and you can either have them work with you to continue to destroy the Tree of Life, or you can defeat them so that they no longer are destroying the Tree of Life. And then the other option, the tribe thing, you go into various outposts and you clear whatever arbitrary challenges inside of it in order to claim it. And then once you've claimed a certain amount, you can, once you have 3 of the tribes under your control, you can say, that's it, we're just done. We'll make peace with the other 2 tribes, or you can go and fight those tribes. So like that's sort of the, I don't know what they're called, shrines. The like outposts are kind of like the shrines.
Okay. All right.
And then, but they're the shrines that like you have to do. Not that there are any shrines that you have to complete, but they kind of represent like you're going to have to do some shrines in order to have enough stamina to pull the Master Sword.
Yeah,
if that
for sure.
makes
Right.
sense.
Exactly. Right. If you really want to continue with this story in any fashion, then you're gonna need to do some shrines.
And I was initially Biomutant was going great for me until right out the bat you have to choose between a group that wants to unite all the tribes or a group that wants to wipe everyone off the planet that they find unworthy of living. They literally give you the Nazis of this world or these other guys.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's it. You can't avoid that choice because I tried to. After making the choice, I had a save game beforehand, and I tried to go after making the choice. I saw where the game took you, and when I went there, it was blocked off. So this game that is all about choice, right? They want you to they give you all these little arbitrary choices. An hour into the game, you have to decide if you're going to unite all of the tribes or destroy all of the tribes. And then if you're uniting, you're saving the world tree. If you're destroying, you're destroying the world tree as well. Just kill them all, really, right?
Yeah. Okay.
And then once you do the whole tribe quest, actually before you do the whole tribe quest, I found out, but everything online says once you've completed the tribe quest, you can trade your tribe. That's not true. It's just that if you don't do the tribe quest, which is the main quest and how it's presented to you, if you go to any of the other tribe fortresses, they'll gladly take you if you ask for a meeting with their leader. But the game, and maybe this has been fixed in patches, but I did everything on the day one release of the game. I didn't download any patches. It doesn't move your objectives. So I joined another tribe, and then I went to go to where the objective for my first mission to take over tribes was, and that didn't exist anymore.
Oops.
So, like, well, that's something that you guys gotta fix. That's a problem with your game. But because I was so offended by the, like, choose the Nazis or the not Nazis at the beginning, I decided that I was going to go kill the World Eaters first and then see if I even have to deal with this tribe nonsense, or if I'm like, I'm just saying I'm with you guys so that, like, I'll be chill, like you guys will be on my side if we run into each other out in the world.
Right.
So I go and I killed the 4 World Eaters. I explored everything. I completed every possible side quest in the game. That's not true. I didn't complete. I have 4 instances of the Lotus Captain that I didn't complete because everybody in towns and villages gave me the Lotus Captain challenge.
Okay.
And I went and I did it the first time, and I figured that that would mean I could just turn it into all of these people who talked about this rogue captain of the Lotus tribe. No, you complete it the one time, you turn it into the first person who gave it to you, and then they just sit there in your side quest list because you've already killed him, so you can't go kill him again.
Oh no. Damn, there was a bunch of Borderlands 3 stuff that did that to me where like I went to areas early and then like it was like, "Hey, go discover this area." And then I did, and it won't pop that I visited that area now, and it's pissing me off because I can't ever platinum the game because, you know, there's like a map building trophy.
I'm sorry about that.
That is upsetting.
I was able to platinum Biomutant on that first build, so no worries there. But yeah, I was not happy at all about that. But then I kill all the World Eaters, and everybody doesn't like this game because they say that it takes too long to get into it and the combat is boring. I feel like nobody gets to the part after you finish up the tribes or kill the World Eaters where it's revealed that there's a spaceship underneath the Tree of Life, and the guy, Out of Date is his name, he would like you to find 4 people to go on the Ark with you if we end up having to leave the planet.
Is that not the story? Wait a minute, what?
Like, that just comes in after you've like conquered all the tribes or killed the 4 World Eaters. You're told about, we have this spaceship, try to find 4 people to come with us into space. but also do a bunch of stuff to save this planet as well. And in the end, I saved the planet, so I don't know why we had to go into space. But I do know that I only brought 2 people with me because I had decided on the 4 people I wanted, and it was sort of a big fuck you to Biomutant. I haven't even said the thing that upset me, right? This is not the thing that upset me about Biomutant.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, this game sounds like it's a mess.
Yeah. So you have to find the 4 people, and Biomutant, for all of its talk about choice and customization of the character, you have to be a male. It is a male no matter what. So I decided when it came time to find my 4 people riding on the Ark with me to save the species, I was only going to invite the female characters in the game, of which there are only 4. So, like, little bit harem anime style, I'm not gonna lie. Little Tenchi Muyo with weasel creatures. But only 2 of them wanted to go with me. The other one was like, I don't shut up, so I think that we would get into a fight if we were in space together. And then the other one, she's a voodoo priestess, and she said, you don't take my dolls, which she calls poppets, seriously enough for me to go into space with you. But let me tell you a little thing, Seachin. I kept my character completely balanced the whole game. Dale is playing the same game. She is pure light. Those 2 characters gave her the same reason for not wanting to go with her.
So do you have to...
I feel like it's just scripted that they don't go with you.
We have to look into that and see. Yeah.
There's no way. I mean, maybe you have to be dark-allied for the mechanic girl, because I'm like, oh, you're a mechanic. In addition to my weird ideal of like, if you're gonna make me be a man, then this mission to save the species is going to be what that would mean. Fucking Biomutant. I'm so mad about it. I'm sorry. But also she's a mechanic, so old relic that we found underneath the earth, I'd kind of want her on board in case something goes wrong with it.
Yeah.
But no, we wouldn't get along. And it's like,
see, the problem is like, I thought we were past this point in games, you know, like when we were first talking about this off mic, you had mentioned Mass Effect and the ending of that series, and about how you hit a point where, for all of its talk about the idea of you affecting the universe, it came down to basically one choice, and that being something that pissed a bunch of people off. And like, even then it was pointed out this is nothing new to games. It was just the amount that they promised it wasn't going to be that is what really set off the stuff about Mass Effect. Because my big experience with that is Fallout New Vegas, where no matter what you do in that game, you eventually hit a point where you have to decide, funny enough, do you want to go with the Nazis or the not Nazis? Although they're both kind of Nazis. It's weird. But the you know, you get the chance of either going with the Kaiser Legion, which is like these dudes that literally crucify people on the sides of the road that they believe to be heathens, or you can go with the NCR, the basically the new army, the new republic. And like, obviously the answer is to go with the New Republic, because otherwise you're joining the dudes that are crucifying people. But you know also that the government is not great either. But those are the 2 big fighting factions over the Hoover Dam at the end of that game. And I tried to do a third option, which was to not go with either of them, and the game just doesn't progress. So either you finish that game by making this choice, or you just don't finish that game. And honestly, in a lot of ways, I kind of wish I just hadn't finished the game.
And that would have been my choice an hour into this game.
Yeah.
And then I was able to find that, like, I was able to join the tribe I wanted to join, which sought to separate the tribes, like, understand that we can live and let live, save the tree, and destroy the world eaters. And that's what I ended up doing. Like, so I joined them, and I did that, and it made me happy. Like, we can all be tribes, but, like, we don't need to all conform to one person's thing. But even that didn't have a grand effect on what happened in the game. Like, but...
You know, I guess the thing that really gets me is the same thing that I was just saying about Mass Effect, is like, don't put that promise on the table. Like I get that idea that like we want to tell that kind of story, and games should be able to tell any kind of story that they can, but like clearly they couldn't figure out how to tell that story. That's so disappointing. That's so
No.
disheartening.
What is so disappointing, Siegen, is after destroying all the world eaters and being told you have to go unite the tribes before we can end the game, right? We can't progress until there's peace amongst the tribes, or all the tribes there's no more tribes. Go do it. So I go do that. I complete the tribe mission, and then when I go back to talk to Out of Date, he gives me a rash of shit for not focusing on killing the world eaters first, but for dicking around with the tribes. And like, every world eater was dead. I specifically decided I don't give a shit about this tribe bullshit. I'm gonna go kill the threat to the world, and then we can go from there. So like, not only is there no choice, Siegen, they didn't even write a secondary discussion.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so you guys just didn't give a fuck about this at all. And then the last thing is, you have the light dark system, right? And I did my best to stay balanced the entire game. The entire game. But then at the end of the game, regardless of everything that I did in the fight and how I approached it, first of all, everybody talks about forgiving the guy who killed your parents, and then you speak to him and he tells you why he did it, and it turns out that it was in retaliation for your parents killing his mother. And it's like one of the situations where like, oh, so does violence beget more violence, or are we going to end this loop?
Right.
They don't give you that choice. You have to fight him. No matter what, you have to fight him. So like, why all the platitudes and discussions about forgiveness is the best revenge? If at the end of it, no matter what, you're gonna make me fight him.
It really feels like they had an intended story for this and then shoehorned in the idea that you can choose, when like it seems like there was the story team and then there was the gameplay team, and the gameplay team really wanted to make something where you got to make a bunch of choices that would change things, and the story team was like, this is the only thing we've written. Like this is the story of this game. Like, why do that? Why not just make it a single player, like single focused experience?
I don't know.
Especially because if you can't be anything but male, if you can't do anything but make this choice, if you like what is the whole idea of, is it a metaphor for the illusion of choice?
It just, like, everybody that has complained about it says I got bored after X amount of hours and that's why I stopped. I put 2 days into this game, clearing every side mission and exploring a richly built world and enjoying like kind of every minute of that. It really plays on the anti-pollution cartoons that we got in the 90s. Like, it feels like the video game equivalent of that, and I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me. But then at the end of it, where it's like, I can't believe you didn't defeat the World Eaters. Where are your priorities? And I'm like, they've been dead for a day in real time. What are you talking about? Like, it just made me upset. And then when you first fight the guy, you can choose to let the members of your tribe deal with him. But then halfway through, he knocks out the leader of the tribe and is like, well, now you have to step in. And I'm like, so I waited here while the weak guys tried to fight him. And then once they got him down to half health, no, you have to fight him. Why would you think you wouldn't have to fight the final boss? Well, because you told me I might want to forgive him. And that I can let my tribe handle it if I don't want to be involved in this fight.
Yeah. I am starting to realize why I have not heard much buzz about it since it came out, because it sounds to me like anybody that was bored with it has been very vocal, and anybody that got to the end doesn't have it in them to say anything about it.
Well, I'm certainly not that. I got the platinum almost to spite the game.
Let it never be said that you chose to be quiet.
Like, oh, but then the last one, the final thing about all that is I played balance that whole time, and then regardless of that, they gave me 5 light points, so I ended the game light.
Fuck you.
I'm just like, I worked this whole thing to like try to do the third option, understand that like properly living in a society like this, you're going to have to get some blood on your hands, but also you can do good while doing that. And then they're
Oh
like,
God,
no, fuck you.
such a fuck you in particular. Like it's just like
Yeah. And I haven't been able to share this with anybody because of that. So that's Biomutant. And as much as I want to stop the show right now because we're getting a little long and I can smell the food upstairs, I also have to talk about Astalon Tears of the Earth.
yeah, okay, man.
Or
That was a bit of a surprise when you sent that image to me today.
or rather Astalon Episode 2, The Tears of the Earth. Because this is the second game, but the prequel will be released later, in which you play as the father of one of the characters in this game. They're both being developed, but they finished this game first.
Calm down, George Lucas.
It made me smile when it's like episode 2, and I'm like, that's just funny, right? Like, that's just a good little joke. And then I've read more about it, and I'm like, oh no, they're planning an episode 1. It wasn't just like a funny little one-off joke. And a lot of people are having difficulty with Astalon Tears of the Earth. The first
What kind of
thing
game is it?
It is a Metroidvania.
Okay.
It is also roguelite, right? Or roguelike, or whatever, however you say that, in the fact that when you die, you can better your character, but it is a set map. The map doesn't randomize every time that you die, so it's sort of catered to exactly what I want. I love
more
the
Dark
thing,
Souls than it is yeah, okay, than like a Binding of Isaac or something like that. Okay.
I mean, the Dark Souls of it all, I love that you die and you hold on to your souls, and then you spend them in the underworld, so that when you go back to the upper world, the overworld, you have more powers.
Right.
And also it leans into the fact that like death warping, it's not just something you could do, it's something you should do, because in addition to getting you back to where you want to be, you can also bump up your character with everything you've done in the interim. And I really dug that. A lot of people are complaining that it's very hard. The biggest complaint is that when you die, you start at the beginning of the game every time, as if the next room doesn't have an elevator in it that can take you almost everywhere in the castle if you've already been there.
That's weird complaint. They clearly haven't well, that's a weird complaint on 2 levels. There's a lot of games that do that. We just mentioned a bunch of them. And then on top of that, if there's a mechanic to even combat that feeling, like I haven't played it, so maybe there's still this overwhelming feel of like I'm starting from the beginning again, but that's a weird issue to have with this
Like
particular type of game.
Dude, that's the read that I've gotten so much, to the fact, the reason why I need to talk about Astalon Tears of the Earth is because I platinumed it over the last 3 days, right? I want to first give credit to the Dan Gem Games for marketing it the way that they did. They gave out a bunch of free codes to people on Twitch. I saw people that I knew playing it on Twitch, and then I'm like, oh, this looks interesting. I need to go play it, because I don't want to watch someone play it. This looks like the kind of game I would like to play. Yeah. So it worked, and I can't think of a time that it's ever worked on me where they give out free games and then I'm like, ooh, this looks like something I'd want to play. How do I not know about it? And honestly, I don't know. Like, maybe if I'd gone to E3 last year, I might have heard about it, and we could have talked about it for a year. But in the time that it has been out, which was June 3rd, so it's been out for, what is that? I'm trying to do the math.
11 days.
11 days.
Yeah.
The PC version has had 12 patches.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
And the PlayStation, the console versions have had 1 patch. And as I talked about when I talked about Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, I'm not a fan of patches that modify the game's difficulty. I didn't like Rotten because it made the game harder, right?
Yeah, right.
They're like, this game needs to be harder, even on normal mode. We have harder difficulty modes, but even normal mode, it's too easy. And it's like, okay, well, like, that should have been something handled in-house, right? Like, don't release the game, and then is too
Well,
easy for people. Like I don't.
because clearly it's just them reading metrics and not liking the metrics, and that's weird because that has nothing to do with the game and people's and the way people are receiving it. They're literally looking at numbers and saying like, too many people are getting to this part too fast, let's beef it up. And it's just like, fuck that.
Right. So
And it's just as bad the other way, is when they read those metrics and they're like, oh, not enough people are getting to the end of my game, let's make it a little bit easier. It's just like maybe just do a sequel and make sure that you put more mechanics into the sequel to help people.
or
Maybe.
put out a difficulty mode, right?
Yeah.
Biomutant added an extreme difficulty when people said the combat is too easy. They added a harder mode, but they didn't affect the existing modes. They could have done a harder mode for Astalon. Instead, they made the game easier. And the one that really got me, like the one that really bothered me when I heard about it, is they added another elevator halfway through the final section of the tower you're climbing.
Okay.
And the beauty of that tower section is as you're climbing it, you're unlocking shortcuts so that the central like parapet, you can go up to wherever you died from the first elevator. And like that was fun. Like it's like, oh cool, because I got further, I can now get back to where I was if I happen to die, right?
Yeah.
By putting an elevator at the top of that, like it takes away all of the beautiful game design that you did to like why these shortcuts exist.
Yeah.
It bummed me out. I'm not gonna lie, it bummed me out. But then today, I finally installed the patch because the monster mode, every time I unlocked it, it froze the game. And I just needed to beat the monster mode to win the game, which is like the axe mode in Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You play as an enemy and you have to go kill the final boss. It has the best mode in the game. I'm not going to lie to you. The guy can fly. He's got a projectile. It's like, this is what the game could have, should have been. As much as I like the mechanic of sort of the Lost Vikings climbing a tower.
Yeah.
This was awesome. Like this guy is cool. And I'm glad that you gave us the ability to play as him. Because it kind of feels like maybe it was a dev mode so that they could test things. And too rarely do they give you that. But then I noticed, because I'd been playing the game so much in the first version before the patch, in addition to adding an elevator, which also is not in the PlayStation version yet. It's only in the PC version, which has had 12 patches, right?
Yeah.
Which kind of tells you where the developers, I guess, this was developed for. Yeah, their focus is on the PC version.
Yeah.
And it tells me going forward, and I kind of felt this after Cyber Shadow, but now after playing this game and seeing just how much more care a PC release of the game has gotten, I need to start buying these small indie games specifically on my PC. Like that should be where I'm playing them. So I got to build a PC.
Man. I mean, especially
like
nice, especially because you have such a great fucking controller in the what do you call it controller?
My hitbox.
Google. No, the Google.
Oh, the
controller.
Google Stadia controller. Yes.
The Google Stadia controller, because I have been using it a bunch lately. Ever since you told me, I think on the show, that you could use it plugged in. I didn't know that. So I was under the impression you could only use it for Stadia games and nothing fucking else. But when you said, no, you can plug it in and just use it as a Steam controller if you want, I've been having a fucking blast playing all sorts of stuff with it. And it's such a great controller.
Yeah. I mean, I like my Pokken controller for stuff on my PC, but if I were to need analog sticks, I'd go right for the Stadia controller. You're not wrong. But that's the thing. So that's the thing. But in addition to adding an elevator, which sort of trivializes what is supposed to be the hardest part of the game, like that's the other thing, right? Like the player should have gotten better, like so that they can climb the tower, not so they can just warp. I don't know, whatever. They lowered the prices on almost all of the upgrades.
In the shops, you mean in game?
Yeah. And that is just so weird to me. Like I can't think of like I think of Rotten, and they really do seem like two sides of the same coin, where in Rotten they raised the prices of a bunch of things because I guess they thought that people were doing too well. Astalon, like in order to there's an archer character, her name is Kayuli. She has a combo thing that you could unlock, and initially it cost 1,200 orbs in order to unlock it. It's
Yeah.
now 1,000. And I know that that might sound like a trivial sort of thing, but 200 orbs, like, that's kind of a big difference in
Yeah,
terms
no, I
of,
mean,
like, I'll,
clearly, if the change was made, it was significant. There was no reason to make the change if it wasn't going to be a significant one, right?
yeah.
But that's, yeah, I don't know, man. I think that like the nice like handshake like answer to this issue is difficulty settings. And I know that we were like we're throwing that out there before, like it's the easiest fucking thing in the world to do, and I know that it's not, but that really is the answer here. Is like they need to allow people like you to experience the game in the ways that you were experiencing it. The worst part is that you got a taste of it and then they took it away, because if that had not been the case, if you did not know that that's what the game had been originally like, maybe you'd have different feelings.
I just was surprised at feeling this way on the other side of it. Because, like,
Yeah.
with Bloodstained, I got that game a week early. So, like, I really wasn't supposed to be playing it, right? And a lot of the changes that they made to it came with the day one patch. Not the changes that I really complain about, like making magic spells less effective. That just seems like a weird thing to change. I will never understand it. But this game, I even waited a week, right? Because I knew I was busy. I knew I was taking that road trip. So I'm like, I'll wait a week until next weekend, and that'll be what I do with my time. And then to find out that, like, I still was able to get the first version that was released, and then halfway through the weekend, they released the patch, and I grabbed it, and I'm like, I'm not going to get the patch yet, because I want to look up what the patch is going to do for the game. And that's how I find out that the Steam version has had 12 patches and the various things that it does. But then because I don't know which of these 12 patches it is for the console version, is it just the first one? Or did you guys wait until the 12th one to push it out to the PlayStation? Like, what am I supposed to do? So instead, I just kept it on regular, on the one that I had learned on. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this game is because I really enjoyed it. I had a great time with it. And after my first playthrough, 100%, 21 hours in a Metroidvania, loving almost every minute of it, my thought was, I'm probably going to start speedrunning this game. But then when I finally got to play with the patch, I'm like, no, this isn't for me. I'm sorry. And that might sound strange because, like, you made the game a little easier, so it's probably easier to speedrun. But it's more the fact that I really don't like learning a game and then the game changing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it's not the game that you fell in love with. I mean, I can totally respect that.
Yeah. And I mean, it really came down to, in the last one is, I was teching a bunch of the bosses on that original build, and I'm like, well, this is useless. This information will do no one any good because it's been changed. So I started doing tech on the bosses in the second one, and, like, I noticed a lot of small corrections. They kind of felt like the Cuphead kind of corrections where, like, oh, this boss, we felt the hitbox was too big on this boss. And it's like, yeah, but people learned the game with the bigger hitbox. Like, test it beforehand.
Yeah.
And you know what? Since you flushed my dreams of becoming an America's Got Talent judge down the drain, thank you, by the way. I now see just how foolish that idea would have been in terms of what that show is trying to do, what I'm trying to do, and why I'm in the wrong on that one. I'd really like to be the type of person that could test this type of game. Right?
Yeah, I know. I mean, game testers is a legitimate like job. I thought there was gonna be more to that. Like,
No,
you want to be a
that's it.
game tester? Like, let's get you in there, man. Let's go find out.
But I don't care to test, like, the 3D AAA titles, right? First of all, I don't think people are testing them based upon how frequent and furious the patches are.
I don't know, man. I've seen 101 Dalmatians, and Jeff Daniels definitely gets his game tested in that movie.
That was in 1999. 1996! Not even 99. 1996, that game got tested. Do you honestly think that a game like Biomutant, with, like, some of the glaring glitches that are available if you look for glitch compilations, what like is getting tested. I mean,
No,
it's
you're right.
probably getting
We need
tested to be playable, but
yeah, we need to lean more into the grandma's boy of it all.
oh god, yeah. No, I want to test like specifically 2D platformer Metroidvania stuff
Nice.
because I'm already approaching these games like what could break in this game? What stupid thing could I do that might break this game?
I know, but the thing is, and I think this goes towards what you were saying about games not being tested, and I think the reason why you're seeing so many of these games being just put out there and then patched and all that is they've realized that they could just use the community to do this. You're not the only person that feels this way, so they can just use the community to test their game for them. And then it's a whole portion of the budget of gaming that has just been unloaded
Eliminated, yeah.
onto the public instead. Like it's just been offloaded. Like there's no reason for them to worry about it now because they can always go in and patch them. And like I think part of the reason that you're not seeing as many patches on the console is because they have their own like systems for allowing patches through. It's a lot harder to get them approved, and then they have to be dated and all that sort of stuff. Whereas like on PC, nobody gives a fuck. You can just push them out whenever you push them out.
Right.
So like that's why you're going to see more there, and then like then there'll be a culmination of the ones that work pushed to the PS3. But maybe you'll see things that are currently patched into the PC one that won't ever make it into the console versions because they just don't work.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I stopped playing Cyber Shadow was the PC version is on patch 3, and they've said that patch is not going to go to any of the consoles. They're going to wait until a 4th patch because they know that they're coming. It's coming.
Yeah.
And it's just like, oh, okay, cool. So inherently, the value of the game that I bought on my PlayStation is less than the one I got on the PC. Because of that,
I mean, I
in a
don't
weird
know.
way. Like, and
Yeah,
also,
but
I don't know.
I don't know what PlayStation's whole like I don't know what their like for all intents and purposes contracts are regarding things like patching and things like that. I know that it used to be quite a big deal to have to put a patch out. I mean, back in the days when like the PS3 was in the PS2 and all that stuff first connected to the internet, like it was a bigger deal for them to monitor that sort of stuff. But I don't know if maybe some of that shit still stands. So part of it could be like we don't want to waste our time going through all the effort to push this patch out when 2 weeks later patch 4 will be out. Like, and I kind of can't blame them for that if it's because it's just way too much work for them to push this one out that they know isn't going to be the final one.
Yeah, it's what you said. It's that the developer to PC, they can just push it out and it's active. There is a whole adjudication process to go through any of the other ones, which is really strange when you consider that Xbox is that way too, since it's essentially just the PC. But we can discuss that later. But that's the thing, is that like we don't want to submit it for that process until we have the 4th one done. And I'm like, okay, well, I don't really want to learn the game knowing that a thing that corrects some of the glaring issues in the game is coming.
Yeah.
Like when I'm stuck in slow motion running and they're like, we know why that happens, but we haven't fixed it yet. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And I guess the reason behind the game tester thing is that Astalon Tears of the Earth actually has game testers listed, like 9 people who tested the game. And the fact that they never found that like randomly you might clip through the floor. Like,
yeah, but that's 9 people versus thousands of people playing it.
That's true.
Out, you know?
And those thousands people, let's say half of them are trying to find ways to do that.
Yeah.
But really, it's the people who do it accidentally. You've just done a bunch of progress and you didn't save because you're like, well, I'm going to get to the save point at the top of this tower and save there. You fall through the floor and it's just like, well, too bad. You got to restart now, Devin.
Womp womp.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I know. It's I mean, the fact that video games become a living and breathing thing is still something new to me as a gamer, and I have to consider all the time.
I guess I wasn't surprised when I felt this way about Ritual of the Night. Yeah. I am surprised that a game getting easier has bothered me as much as this one has. I think mostly because, like you said, it's those metrics and it's the people on the internet saying this game is too hard, buyer beware, and it's just like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
That like you had a balance issue to this game. You decided how hard you wanted the game to be, but then unfortunately, the almighty dollar, right, the Muggugah of it all, is what determines it.
Always the Muggugah, man.
Ugh.
Always the Muggugah, man.
Always the Muggugah, man. All right. So I've said far too much about far too many things this week. Siegen, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No. I mean, like we covered a lot of what's been going on in this house. I mean, it was E3 this week. A lot of crazy stuff has come out. We're still kind of sitting through some stuff coming out over the next few days, right?
Yeah.
But so we'll talk more about that next week.
Yeah.
But no, man. It's been good to get back into the swing of things, both after COVID and after the month of May. So like both in my real life and in my Say Report life, it's been nice to just get back to normal for a bit.
I 100% agree with that, my friend. It is nice. It's nice to be thinking about this stuff. And I would have loved to talk about E3, but Capcom decided that they were going to present the same time that we record. And then Nintendo, we're doing it on Tuesday. Yeah. And those are two that I would want to focus on.
Yeah, those are two that we really want to talk
about. I don't know what to tell you. Resident Evil Twix? Maybe? I'm proud of it. I'm proud of saying Twix. Because the IX for 9. Right? I mean, that's what it has to be. What else has an I and an X in it? Oh, I know. Resident Evil Hicksville.
Oh.
I love it. I love it. It's a whole village of people from Biohazard. All right, I think I've said enough. If you would like to recommend me some more Metroidvania games that are maybe already patched into oblivion that I might enjoy, you can find me on Twitter at Devin D. Decker.
And if you have some sweet early access to Resident Evil Ixnay, you can find me at Siege versus the World.
All right, well, on that much better pun than the two I came up with, Will, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.